And this is a challenge for me because I've already presented the content a few days ago, and I'm trying not to repeat myself, but I don't know what else to do but to try to hit the highlights with some repetition. So I'm trying. I don't want to do a lot of that. But what I did think I want to each week I want to share something with you new that I've learned, or something that I think might be useful. And this is something that I think might be useful. Has nothing to do with Fit for Life, except we can talk about longevity. So I want to tell you a story. 2-3 weeks ago, I was in Fredericksburg, Virginia, with my dad. There's my dad. He's 95. Now, back in March, he was really sick, and he was hardly able to get out of bed. And he had a bad urinary infection. He was in Columbus. My brother and I took my mom to the cemetery. We said, "Mom, this is the cemetery, and this is where the service is going to be." And 2 days later, he started to come around. But he was really weak. And so we transferred him from Columbus to our hospital for rehab. Now, 2 hours away. You don't do that too often. And I happened to be the doctor on call the day he came to the hospital. So I got to admit my own dad. I knew everything about him. And I said, "Dad, I'm going to give you everything, all the things that I can't give other patients, because I'm going to include supplements and other things." And one of the things that he had was a very low testosterone level. He had been on testosterone, but it was really low, and he'd stopped using it. So I said, "You get shots." And then I'll talk to you about all this stuff too, but nitric oxide was a lozenge I gave him to help him with his memory. And so he was there for about a week and a half, and he loved the rehab. So again, I could show you videos of him hardly able to get out of bed, but this is, I think that was March, and this was 2 weeks ago in Virginia. So this is he was a combat veteran, World War II. He was in the Marines. He fought the last battle of World War II on the island of Okinawa. And after they won this island, they were preparing for the invasion of Japan. So he was 18 years old, right out of high school when he went in the Marines. And he survived it. And I want to tell you a couple stories about it. But this is him at the Marine Museum in Fredericksburg. He was marking on a map the island that he fought on, which was Okinawa in the Pacific. This is a picture of my dad with a machine gun that he used to use. This is a really cool picture. This was the 50th reunion for this group of Marines from Okinawa. These are like the last guys standing. They were anywhere from 94 to 96 years old. They decided after 50 years they weren't going to have any more. This was their last one. So this is their final salute. I mean, it kind of gives me chills to say that. That's pretty neat. This was a picture of my mom and dad with a guy named Buzz Bissinger. Buzz Bissinger's father was on Okinawa, and so Buzz has been coming to these for about 10 years, or maybe longer. And his father has since passed away, but he's been intrigued by the story. If any of you have ever watched the series Friday Night Lights, a TV show series, he was the author of the original book, and he helped to direct that TV series. So I got to talk to him, and he said, "I've written another book. It comes out on Father's Day. It's called The Mosquito Bowl." The Mosquito Bowl was about it was about men. There were 84 men on the island of Guadalcanal after they had beat the Japanese. It was near Thanksgiving, and these Marines had nothing to do. It was the holidays. They if we were back home, we'd be watching football. We want to play a football game. And so a lot of these guys had played professional or college football. So can we play a game? The Marines said, "Sure, we'll let you have Thanksgiving Day off. You can play this game." They sent them everything, helmets and balls, and they had goalposts, they had referees, and they played this. It was a big deal for these guys. A year later, at the end of the war, 25 of those guys had been killed in combat. And so what Buzz did is he's been impressed with their stories. So this book called The Mosquito Bowl is about that football game and following the life of 4 of these guys who were in that game and then went to combat. And he said it's coming out in November. So kind of neat. And then this picture is a picture of my dad with a guy. I can't think of his first name now. I forgot his first name. His last name is McDermott. Now, this is a weird story. His uncle died on the island of Okinawa, and he found out that this was going to be the last time these guys are going to get together. He thought, I don't know much about my uncle. I just know what my grandma told me, that, you know, he was a fun-loving guy, whatever. And so there was like 7 or 8 veterans. That's all they had. So he just started to walk around, introducing himself. Did you happen to know my uncle Wilfred McDermott? Came up to my dad, and my dad said, I was the last one to talk to him. Oh, my God. And the story is my dad was in a squad with 5 other Marines, and they were on top of a hill, and there were 9 Japanese on another hilltop. And the Japanese were far enough away that they couldn't detect that these were Americans. So the Japanese waved at my dad and this squad. And so he said, what do we do? Wave back at them. So they waved back. And then they set up their machine gun, and they got 3 rounds off. The Americans did, and it got jammed because of the sand on the island. So now they're outnumbered, and the Japanese are throwing everything at them. And so the Americans, McDermott and my dad and another guy named Wells, they were throwing hand grenades, and they were hitting trees and bouncing back at them, and it was just not a good situation. So my dad found a banyan tree nearby, and he got down and he stuck his rifle through this banyan tree, and he started picking off these 9 Japanese soldiers. And he'd get one. I said, I got one. And McDermott's next to him. Okay, you got 8 more to go. Got another one. Okay, 7. He was counting down for him. He got down to the last guy, and he couldn't find him. And the sergeant said, we got to go. And my dad said, no, there's one more. And McDermott was right next to my dad. He stood up. He said, it's time to go. And my dad said, McDermott, get down. There's one more left. And he said, yeah. And he just right then took one right between the eyes, dropped him. And then the lieutenant came along and said, we got to go. And he said, no, there's one more out there. He took a bullet in the elbow, out his wrist, and into his thigh. According to my dad's story, now I don't know if this is true, but he said those were the last 2 casualties of the Marines in that battle. The Army lost a few more. So he was so grateful to be able to hear this story about his uncle. I mean, what are the odds that, you know, I don't know, how many years ago was that? 80 years or something that he would find out finally about his uncle. Then there was a TV interviewer from the Virginia area he's been in broadcast TV for 50 years, and he was doing a piece on these. He was going to do something on his morning broadcast. So he interviewed these guys, and my dad had some pretty good stories. So when he left, he came back in. He said, I want you to meet this guy. So this guy said, there's a retired NFL football player who has an affection for combat Marines from World War II. And he is flying. We are looking for 60 Marines and their spouses to go on an all-expense paid trip to Honolulu for the Arizona Memorial of the 80th year recognition of the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Would you and your wife like to go? So my dad said, sure. And I said, I told the guy, I said, you know, these guys are pretty old, and you never know what could happen to them. And you should have a doctor. I don't know. He said, I'll get your number. So I don't know if I'm going to go or not. I just think that was a pretty moving event for us. And there was one that I wasn't able to show you. I guess it didn't come through. They had an 80-year-old bottle of scotch. It was in a wooden case, and it was for the last man standing. So one of the last things they did was they broke this open and had a toast to all their comrades. And my dad was the chaplain for this division, and every year they would ring a bell for every fallen soldier or a spouse of a soldier. So it was a really cool event. It was the last one. So I just have a lot of pride in these guys. Anybody that serves puts their life on the line to defend our freedoms. And I'll probably tell you more stories as we go along, but.
Were you there with your father?
Yes. Yeah, I was there. My brother and I and my mom and our spouses were there. And when I hear I'll share a story, a couple poems with you sometime. My dad wrote a poem called White Crosses, and every star on the flag is a name of somebody that he knew that was killed in combat. And he wrote a poem about this. So when I hear the Star Spangled Banner, I'm not thinking of the words. I'm thinking of these guys. And I'm hearing the mothers weep when they find out their sons were killed, or their calls for help when they're wounded. Some pretty heroic, but I'll share you another story with you another time about two of his friends in boot camp. It was very, very heroic and very touching. But other than longevity, the other thing I'll say about my dad, and I'll probably have to prove this with a video, is that I think he was 88. It was a Saturday. I called him and I said, "Hey, Dad, are you watching the High State game?" And my mom said, "No, he can't come to the farm right now. He's doing push-ups." I'm like, "What do you mean he's doing push-ups?" So he started doing push-ups today. Every time they'd score a touchdown, he'd do a push-up. So at 95, he did a lot of push-ups Saturday. And my mom was there to make sure he does every single one. So we actually got to go to a football game, the Army game in 1990, or let's see, 3 or 4 years ago. My dad was 91. And I talked to the commandant of the ROTC Marines at Ohio State, and I said, my dad's a combat veteran, and he was also a 3-year letterman at Ohio State. Would you mind if he came and did push-ups with the cadets? So they put us right by the flagpole in front row, and he did push-ups with the cadets. So we got videos of that. It's pretty neat. So I feel very guilty when I'm watching the game after a touchdown if I don't get down and do something. Okay. So I want to hear how you guys did this last week with these goals that I set for you, especially the fasting. What did you learn from that experience? Is that harder than you thought it would be? Easier?
It was very easy for me.
Okay.
I did it for 24 hours.
Okay. Did anybody think they were going to die the first 4 hours? They didn't think it was real hard? Okay. Well, some people do. So hopefully it taught you about, did anybody go to the refrigerator and start to grab something and remember, oh, shoot, I'm fasting? Anybody do that? Or the cupboard? I mean, it really takes a lot of thought sometimes to not eat, because we eat a lot without even thinking. Okay, was there anything difficult about the other two? Eating out, not eating out, or getting your water in? Anything difficult about that?
We own a restaurant, so I eat out 6 days a week, twice a day.
Oh, well, that's like eating at home then, right? Okay. So maybe for you, you shouldn't eat at home, right? Okay, well, that's cool. That's good. So there's a lot to learn about this, your experience, how you felt during the beginning of the fast, at the end of the fast. What was your thought when you broke your fast as far as what you were going to eat? Were you thinking, just give me a bag of chips? I just want a candy bar? Or was it something different? Did any of you want junk food at the end of the fast? No. Isn't that interesting? Like, why would you do that? The tank is empty. You don't put bad gas in a tank that's empty. You put the best gas in. So you kind of already know you're supposed to do these things. Okay. So this week was about teaching us that nature teaches us how to heal. And if we study nature, it's all there for us. So I tried to use nature's lessons to remind us of how we're supposed to heal. So the first lesson is this message on balance and harmony. And I gave you these examples. And I'm trying to emphasize that whether we're at the solar system level or we're at the atomic level, there's a pattern there. There's electrons that move around the nucleus, there's planets that move around the sun, and there's a perfect balance. And if you violate this balance, let's say you don't get enough sleep, and you're up all night, you're going to pay a price eventually. And if you follow the animal world, they don't violate that. I mean, animals that are supposed to sleep at night. And, we're the only animal that doesn't always do that. So nature's teaching us this. Also, every major system And your body has a series of checks and balances, and your cell has a series of checks and balances. I don't know if you know this, but your cell is surrounded by a membrane, and that membrane keeps everything out. Nothing gets to go into your cell unless there's a receptor that says, this is geometric configuration of the molecule I'm looking for. If I find that perfect match, you can come in. It's the only way things get in. Now, water can go in through little channels, but your cell is very, very selective. So it's a way for the body to make sure that it doesn't put bad things into the cell. So the question for us is, how is our life unbalanced? What have we done to violate this? You can exercise too much, and exercise when you're sore and you haven't recovered and injure yourself. You can sleep too much. You can eat too much. You can eat too little. You can have too much stress. Just go, 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 and never have any downtime for fun. Those are all examples of how we can have imbalance in our life. And we can live in ways that aren't harmonious to healthy living. And so I just wanted you to think of some ways that you might have violated this principle. And hopefully you thought about it, you wrote down some ideas, because this is supposed to be self-instruction. And then this is sort of the message, the image that I have that's part of the logo of Fit for Life, is that we need to, it's not just about having good cholesterol or having normal blood pressure, not taking medicine. It's not just about a healthy body. It's about healthy relationships, healthy emotions, healthy and healing thoughts. None of us are ever perfect in these areas. And sometimes we're pretty good in 3 of these, and then we just lose it in another one. And the idea is to try to master each of these the best we can and strike that balance. So then I tried to convince you of the importance of this by a study. And this study I just came across, it was a throwaway journal, and it was looking at behaviors of successful weight loss. And when I came across the bullet points of the people who lost weight successfully, it kind of went right back to this logo. Internal motivation is discipline over behaviors. Cognitive behavior strategy means you've really thought through it in your mind. Positive feelings, you have to have those. That's your emotional state, your heart. And then you have to focus these feelings on health and fitness and your appearance. That's also heart. And then social support, that's huge. That's partly what this group provides, but not all of you need somebody that can be a positive influence as you're trying to make changes. It doesn't have to be somebody in the class, but it's got to be somebody. And then there's a contingency management, which is a backup plan. Okay, so these people, these were the key findings for people who were successful with weight loss. So if that's your goal, all of this that we have in Fit for Life and everything you do and the lessons that we've created are designed to help you strike this balance so you're successful this time. Okay, and then this is interesting, the predictors of people that wouldn't lose weight. And do you remember what the point was of this slide? So the question is, what drives our behavior? Is it our thoughts or is it our emotions? Yeah, look at those. Those 4 are emotions. If those are predominant emotions, it doesn't mean you can't change your behavior, but it means you're really swimming upstream. It's going to be hard. So if you have even 2 of these, you have to make up for it in other emotions and other relationships and other energies that are powerful enough to overcome that. People, you can overcome this, but you start to have 3 or 4 of those all working against you, it gets really hard. Okay, and then the message was the lesson of order and sequence. There's an order and sequence to everything. This is just fetal development. You all have followed this rule, just learning how to walk. You don't just one day decide I'm going to walk. You have to be able to roll over, then you have to be able to crawl, then you have to be able to stand. And if there's any physical therapists in here, I'm sure you could tell us that people that have had neurological problems and they can't walk, how do we teach them to walk? We tell them, get down on the floor and crawl. First crawl, and then stand up and try to hold your balance. So you can't violate this process. There's no way you can go from rolling to running. It just can't be violated. So there's an order and sequence to everything we do. And it's a mandatory process for consistent outcomes. So the question for you is, what's the order and sequence of your healing? You have to decide what you're here for and how you want to begin. Some of you may feel really overwhelmed, like there's so much I need to do. I need to exercise more, I need to get more sleep, and I need to fix these toxic relationships, and I need to stop eating carbs, and you just get overwhelmed. So you have to decide, what's the most important thing I should do this week? And when I ask you to set these goals, you're doing it. And I'm not trying to overwhelm you. I'm giving you little steps to take every week, but it's self-directed. You have to decide. Some of you might say, I'm ready right now to clean up my diet and I'll do whatever you say. And others are like, that's too much. I'm overwhelmed. Just let me start walking 3 days a week. But you have to figure out where your conscience tells you that you need to begin. Oops. And then nature, the law of the harvest is a perfect example of this. You can't speed this up. Nature never violates it. You don't plant corn in April and harvest it in May. You're never going to be able to do that. Nature would never shortcut it. But yet when we are trying to, say, lose weight and we don't see anything happen in a month, sometimes we just say, this isn't going to work, I give up. And nature would never do that to itself, but we do that to ourselves. Okay, so what's the order and sequence of your healing? And there's this process. It's plan, execute, evaluate, and revise. And I don't know if I said this in the video, but my brother used to be a fighter pilot for the Marines and fly off aircraft carriers. And they always plan their mission before they fly. And then when they come back, they go to a debriefing room and they evaluate their performance. And then they make revisions on the performance. And anybody that's highly successful has to do this at some level, because this is about learning from every day. What did I do well? What did I struggle with? And not just what did I struggle with, like the evaluation. The most important step is, what am I going to do to fix it? That's where most of us we don't know what to do, or we don't do it. So I'm hoping that as you guys go through these changes I ask you to make, that you're doing that. And those insights will come. I guarantee you, you start to evaluate your performance, you'll see things that you need to work on, but how to fix it is going to come to you also. And you just have to jot it down and execute it the next time. Okay, then the third message was interdependence and independence. And again, nature teaches us this. Sometimes we want to fix our lives or change our situation all on our own. And nature never does that. Nature is dependent on all the different systems in nature. So you should not expect to make changes to improve your health all on your own. You're going to need support. You're going to need Kelly's support, my support from loved ones. You're going to need to make sure you have positive energies and you're not in places that are going to make you feel like I can't really control my eating habits if I'm here or in this setting. So our cells can survive independently, but they thrive interdependently. So we can, and I did mention this, we can put your muscle cells in a petri dish and keep them alive. We can put your nerve cells in another dish and keep them alive. We can put your bone cells in another dish and keep them alive. That's living, surviving independently. But when you put the nerves and the muscles and the bones together and they work like they're supposed to, you can do this. You can jump, you can walk. And that's the power of interdependence, where everything works together. And this is like a feeling that I've hoped that you all have felt this at some point in your life, at some experience that you've had, whether you were coaching or you're in a club or like my dad in a military unit, where a group of people achieve something that they never thought they could achieve independent of each other. That team feeling or that unity feeling. Sometimes it happens in a family. About 10 years ago, my brother and his kids and my kids were all in our backyard, and my mom and dad were there. My dad sat on the porch. He's watching all the grandkids playing. He said, "This is really nice." That was one of those moments where everything just felt right. That's interdependence and synergy. Okay, what does this have to do with healing? So let's look at a single unit, a single cell, which we can say the earth is a single cell. It kind of looks like a cell. And then we take somebody off of the planet and then she's weighing herself, and we take a cell out of her, and then we take a molecule out of her cell. And then when we take that molecule apart, we get an atom, and that's what you're made up of. The mass of the atom, you should know this by now, the weight of the atom is in the nucleus, right here. When you stand on the scales and it says 200 pounds, that's the weight of all these nuclei combined together. That gives you your weight. That's kind of boring though, right? Who cares? I got too many of those. Right? Okay, so you also have protons, positively charged, but does everybody remember what these are? The negatively charged particles are electrons, right? Do they just kind of float around? They're flying around the nucleus of the atom, just like planets are orbiting around the Earth. And so they're not stagnant, they're moving. And what does an electrician call the flow of electrons? What's that called? Current. Okay. And then I showed you in a slide the right-hand thumb rule in physics, right? You take your right hand, this is the flow of electrons this way. You wrap your thumb around it and you create a field. What's that field called? Magnetic field, right? And so how do we know there's a magnetic field? Well, when we think you've torn your meniscus, we put you in an MRI machine. We take a picture using magnetic energy to see what's happening with that meniscus. So you are electrical beings. You're electrical magnetic beings. And you kind of know that there's some sense of magnetism, right? Because some people, they're not magnetic at all. They're like, that's repulsive. I don't want to be around them. And other people, they just draw you in because they're interesting. They've got energy that's positive. But the coolest definition of this is when I talked to a quantum physicist. I met her at a conference, and there's not a whole lot of quantum physicists in the world. They have to be really careful, in fact, because people use them in their minds and their science for really destructive purposes, but also can be used for positive purposes. So when I was talking to her about this, she said, you know what we call the flow of electrons in this magnetic field? You know what we call that? We call that light. I'm thinking, wow, so we're electrical magnetic beings of light. That's pretty interesting, right? And don't you sense that some people have more light than others? I mean, from one extreme to the next. Most of us kind of fall in between, and some days we're really down and upset and negative, and other days we're more positive. But that energy is there, and that is part of our healing. So we are electric magnetic beings of light. And the question is, what type of energy are you displaying, and how can you use that energy to help you heal? So do you think your energy, your attitudes, your thoughts, your emotions can impact other people? Obviously it can, right? How about somebody on the other side of the country? Can it affect them? It should be able to affect them, because if you have, let's say you have a large pond that is the width of the United States, and you throw a rock in that pond, when does the ripple stop? It goes on infinitely until there's something that meets it that stops it, right? So your energy goes on infinitely, and the combined energy affects the planet. What's the energy of our world like right now? I mean, people are really feeling this, right? We've seen a lot of people with anxiety and depression. We talk to people every day about this. There's a lot of anxiety, and we can turn on the news and we can read things, social media, that gets us really upset, or we can stay focused on things that keep us centered and keep us at peace. So I think we have to be really careful now as we're trying to heal, to make sure those energies don't interfere with our efforts to heal, because it can really bring us down. Okay, so this is the importance of finding a coach. And a coach is just, I mean, I was thinking of Urban Meyer just a minute. Not Urban Meyer. Yeah, strike him. But a coach needs to be somebody like what a coach should be, right? Somebody that's honest and fair, but somebody who's always pushing you and is going to give you the feedback that you need to improve, right? And we need to find that person. It might not always be our spouse. Maybe it's a friend or somebody else, but we each need that. We need to go back to people and get some honest feedback as we go through this journey to try to change our behaviors. Okay, so there's the idea of electricity and the right-hand thumb rule we talked about. Oh, and I love this quote. I don't know if any of you know him. He's a pretty famous author and a motivational kind of a guy. He's written a bunch of books. I didn't know anything about him, and I saw this quote. Now that's perfect. Then I realized he's pretty well known. But don't you agree with this statement? Isn't that amazing? Think of those 5 people you spend most of your time with. Maybe 3 of them are really good and 2 of them kind of pull you the other direction. And so maybe we need to rethink some of the people we spend time with. Okay, and then this is what we're talking about, because the people who are around are part of our environment and they affect our genetic expression. We talked about that, right? And this image shows us the same thing. Our bodies, our physiology, our cells, our atoms is the sum total of the environment that we immerse it in. So if this is the environment we're immersed in, we're not going to be healthy. I saw somebody today in the office that I've been taking care of for probably 15 years. And she now needs to be on oxygen. She smoked for a long time. And I feel so bad for her because she has aged so quickly. And just the way she was sitting, leaning forward, you could tell she wasn't getting enough air. And that's the only toxic energy in her life that I know of is cigarettes, but it's caught up with her. So we have to be really careful about these energies to try to minimize their influence on us. And then I tried to illustrate that science bears this out, right? Here's a study that said, we're gonna look at people who have lost weight and kept it off, and we're gonna see what we can learn from this. So the green line, this is the typical weight loss program. You go on a weight loss program and over 6 to 12, no, I'm sorry. Oh, this is weight loss. Okay, so a six month period of time, these people lost 9 kilograms, so about 20 pounds. Okay, that's easily achievable here. And the behavior modification was just diet. I'm going on a diet. I'm going to bear through this. It's not going to be fun. I'm just going to do it because I want to get this weight off. Okay, you're committed. But then they gain the weight back. So in 18 months, they're back to their starting weight. We want to pay attention to this group because not only did this group lose more weight, closer to 30 pounds, but when the program was over, they still lost weight. And 6 months after that, they gained just a little bit back. But look how well they're doing a year and a half after they ended their journey. So whatever they're doing, we need to follow. So here's what they're doing. Behavior modification, they changed their diet. They changed their food intake. Contact with a therapist and social influence. That's the power of people, right? And those positive energies. And then they exercised. So if this is your goal, you want to be like this group. You want to change your diet. You want to exercise. This is much more important than the exercise, by the way. We'll talk about the benefits of exercise, but if your goal is to lose weight, you're not going to exercise it off near as well as you're going to change your diet to lose the weight. But you've got to address these other things. That's why we took the last 2 weeks to talk about mindfulness and intentional healing, changing behavior and recognizing thoughts, emotions, and relationships and their role in helping us heal. Oops.
What's the one mean that says plus exercise 2?
Yeah.
That was, I'm not sure. I hadn't looked at it to tell you for sure what that was, if it was a different type of exercise or it's the second exercise group. But looks like, yeah, they didn't do, well, this gets tough for me because I'm colorblind. I guess this is I don't know. The red one's the one we want to follow. Okay, and then, did you guys enjoy this? No? Makes you mad, doesn't it? Yeah, that'll drive you crazy. So, can you guys all solve this now that you watched the video and you solved it? Are you sure? Okay, you just try it. So, what was the point of this?
I couldn't figure it out.
You couldn't figure it out? You didn't watch the whole video. You ought to showed you.
I couldn't figure out what the point was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thinking outside the box, which makes me want to gag to say it. We're tired of that phrase, right? But we do that all the time. We get stuck in a mindset like this is the only way to solve my problems in life. When my kids they're bad, I'm going to stand them in the corner. I'm going to ground. I'm going to take everything away. I'm going to make their life miserable. But they don't change because it's not effective. So we've got to do things differently. If we're getting the same results, then that approach isn't going to work. And sometimes we got to really step back and be creative and think differently, because we just want to go back to the way that we have always approached a problem. That's the point of this. Okay, and then we talked about the biology of belief, the power of these belief systems. And then I showed you, this was from the week before, but this is a critical stage. This is the stage when our brain gets wired. Our insecurities and those things that we feel confident in, we wired our brains together during this critical stage. That's what that stage is for, is to teach us how to survive in the environment. That's when a puppy is going to learn how to live on its own, going to follow mom's example. So this is just a really, really important time. So this has to do with our self-talk, the sum total of our thoughts and emotions. And the idea is, how do we change that? If we've got dysfunctional thinking or emotions that we know are harming us, how do we change that? It's not just a positive mental attitude or setting a goal. There's more to it. So there's the subconscious and the conscious mind, right? And the conscious mind the subconscious mind is on autopilot. It's always going. The conscious mind is the one we're using right now. So we talked about the differences here, and this is pretty fascinating, because you guys are going to drive home. You're going to, when it's time to leave here, you're going to stand up, reach for your car keys, and walk to your car. You're not even going to pay attention to what you're doing. And in 10, 15, 20 minutes, you're going to be home. And if I ask you, did you stop at the stop sign? Did you stop at the light? And did you see anybody in the crosswalk? And what was going on around you? Did you pass anybody you know? You'll be clueless, because your subconscious mind is just executing, right? And with your conscious mind, you're listening to the radio, you're talking to somebody, you're thinking about what you're going to eat when you go home. But how many of you are going to make a mistake driving home with your subconscious mind? Probably nobody, right? You're all going to stop at the right places. You're going to yield because you've developed that skill. Your brain is wired that way. But the conscious mind is the one that has to think. And the conscious mind is what you're going to use to change your behaviors. And that's not easy to do, is it? Just like learning a new skill, like riding a bicycle. Is that easy to do the first time? No, it's not. Any new skill takes a lot of effort, because you're trying to change the way the wires are connected, the nerves are connected in your brain. A physical connection, you're trying to change that. So you've got a goal. Let's say, I'm not going to swear anymore. Okay, I got to rewire this way. I think I almost got it, and then bam, I lost it. Those words came right out again. Okay, let me try again. And until you've really got to the point where you've made that connection really firm, you're going to go back to the old ways. Okay, so how do we change this? So did you guys do this? Did you see hopefully you remember what that felt like. With your dominant hand, that's easy, right? Don't have to think about it. Your non-dominant hand, what did you do? How did that make you feel with your non-dominant hand as you signed your name? So people were laughing.
Put that pen right down as soon as I was done, just like you said.
You threw the pen down because it was awkward, right? You don't feel, there's a lot of self-judgment, there's criticism. And how many times do we do that with anything we're trying to change? Some of you are probably disappointed you haven't lost more weight, if that's what you're here to do. And so you're getting really like, this isn't working for me. What is wrong? Yes, Marilyn.
I had to do that for 3 months.
Oh,
I'm right-handed.
Yeah.
And it was in a cast and a splint.
Okay.
So, yeah, getting my driver's license renewed. Sign here. Oh! But, yeah, and I felt like a kindergartner, first grade.
And how do you feel now that you've had some months to practice it?
Oh, now it's released from this. Just last week, I could write with my right.
No, but your left hand, how good did you get with your left hand?
Oh, no, well, I could do cursive writing with my left hand, and it wasn't actually too bad. But
So it was getting better. And you know,
from first grade to third grade.
okay. And why was that happening? What was happening in your brain?
I have no idea.
You were rewiring your brain.
Hey, it's stronger.
You were using it, right? So that's the point of this. To change behavior and to rewire the way you're thinking and reacting to situations and seeing the world, it's going to feel awkward. You're going to fail. You're going to judge yourself for being so weak, and you're not going to want to do that. You're going to throw that pen down and go right back to your comfort zone. But the more you practice it, the easier it gets until it becomes automatic. Okay, so it's pretty simple, but it's really critical that you grasp that concept as you try to make changes in your life to heal. So anytime something is hard, I want you to think about this. This teaches us a lot about changing behavior. Okay, then we talked about the placebo effect, right? And this the study where they shaved the cartilage. They did 3 different incisions on 3 different groups, and all of them thought they had the procedure to fix their problem, and they all said that doesn't hurt anymore. You fixed it. That's pretty powerful. And now it's just a belief system. You fixed me, thank you. It doesn't hurt anymore. And then the negative belief system with this Sam Lund, who was a shoe salesman who died of esophageal cancer. That's not what killed him. He died because he believed he was going to die. So positive and negative belief systems are powerful and can change physiology. Just like that example I gave you last week about a bag with a rattlesnake in it, we can change your physiology really quick unless you're not afraid of rattlesnakes because you know how to handle them. And then there's no physiological response. Okay, so we talked about electric magnetic beams of light. So how do we measure this energy? We can measure with our thoughts, right? And I think I mentioned this. How do you know what kind of thoughts you have? If you have a cell phone, you got a clue, right? When you start texting, yeah. FRU for me, it says, oh, you're feeling frustrated again. You've used this word about 1,000 times. Boom. That's predominant emotion. So our words can tell us a lot about our energies. They're an extension of our thoughts. Sam Lund heard that he was going to die, and he believed it so strongly that his physiology changed and caused him to die earlier than he should have. Our emotions are a reflection of our energy. I like this Bible in Proverbs, or this quote in Proverbs. And then our relationships clearly affect our energy. And this is from Mom. You are the company you keep. This is from Jim Lohr. You're the sum total of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. So this is all part of healing. Is it energy associated with life or death?
Life.
Yeah. So what does that have to do with eating? This is a nature lesson. If life has to do with energy, what type of foods should you eat? What? Cars. What's that? Why would you eat plants?
Vegetables and fruit.
Well,
Like the sun creates.
They store the energy the sun makes. Yeah, we're going to show you this, prove this to you in a couple of weeks, because you can measure that energy. You can't measure that energy with a box of Triscuits. There's no energy there. You can measure it with asparagus, broccoli, apples, grapes. You can measure that energy. So there's live food and there's dead food. What does it have to do with exercise? Can you sit in your recliner and think about all your exercises you're going to do? I mean, I guess you can, but It's the more exercise you do, the better you'll become at it, and the better you will heal, as long as you're doing it in a balanced way. You're not injuring something. We'll talk a lot about that when we get to fitness. What about sleep? You can sleep too much, you can sleep too little, or you can sleep too poorly, right? If you've got sleep apnea or might have sleep apnea, you better get it fixed, because you're not going to heal correctly without addressing it. It's really common. If you drink caffeine because you're tired, it will impair your sleep quality, I guarantee you. And then we all know that stress can really fatigue us, right? What does energy have to do with the quality of our thoughts? What kind of thoughts give you energy? Positive thoughts, right? And what might give you energy might not give me the same energy. But thoughts definitely give us energy. So do our emotions. I'll tell you, one of the most powerful emotions is service. If you're feeling down in your energy level, you go out and do something for somebody else, I guarantee you it will give you energy. And if you believe in God and you want to test God's ability to answer your prayers, you ask him, guide me to somebody that I can bless, serve, or lift today. And I guarantee you that opportunity will come. It may be really small, but it may be pretty significant. But when that happens, you'll know that your prayer's been answered. And then, is energy associated with life or death as far as relationships? It should be. Some of us are in relationships that suck the energy out of us and that are really hard. And as I mentioned that before, you have choices. That's one of the best things about living, is we always have a choice. You can divorce that person. You can say, I'll just live with this. I know the rules, just like living with an alcoholic. I know the rules here. Or you can say, I'm going to minimize their influence on me and minimize my exposure to their negativity, but I'm going to make sure everybody else that I'm around is positive, and it pulls me out of that. So you have to be really selective with the other people you're with. And then, how long till these energies manifest themselves? You ever planted something in a little Dixie cup, like a seed, and thought, I think this seed's dead. Nothing's growing. It's in the windowsill and nothing's happened. Sometimes we just dig up the seed before it sprouts. The roots are settling deep before it starts to sprout. So you may be here your third week now, and you're like, nothing's happened to me. This isn't what I wanted it to be. I'm not changing. But maybe you're settling the roots in. And in 5 to 6 weeks, you really start to see the changes you're looking for. Okay, so this is just a summary. How do we become balanced? Remember, there's an order of sequence to our healing. We need to synergize, use the positive energies to help us heal. And we literally create our energy just by our thoughts, emotions, relationships that we're in, and the foods that we put in our body. I guarantee you, and people, some of you have been through this, you could probably give a testimonial about how you felt energy-wise when you started eating plant food versus fast foods and packaged foods. Anybody have an experience they want to share with us about having that happen to them? Yes.
Big time. In February, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. So they thought, because I painted my shed too much during 2020 and blew out my hand. And I was, oh my goodness, 250, the rheumatoid arthritis inflammation was 250 through the roof. I gotta do something. I don't want to take meds. I called my friend Marilyn, a surgical nurse who's done this class twice. And I go, what do I do? It's 250. I don't, there's gotta be diet change somewhere. And she said, anti-inflammatory diet. And she told me, very short, quick, to the point, what is that? And she says, well, it's fish, chicken, more fish, salmon, then chicken, She says it's 2 fruits, it's unlimited vegetables, the more raw vegetables you can eat, the better.
Mhm,
And she says, and no carbs,
mhm.
and only water, black coffee, well, or maybe 1 or 2. And she says, you stick to that, and no carbs. I says, no carbs. What in the world are carbs? She goes, well, no white flour, no white rice, no noodles, no potatoes. Oh, dear Lord, so gone. She says, I guarantee you in 2 weeks, you will feel significantly different. And I did. When I called her, I had just experienced hot coals, bags of ice, a prickly cactus, and a tennis ball on my feet. 1 foot, lasted a day and a half, couldn't walk. That disappeared, then the 2nd foot. All of them things at once. And then I go, and I haven't had that ice and coals and cactus and tennis balls since. But I've been sticking to noodles, and I love buttered noodles, I love spaghetti, I love all of that.
Mhm.
No noodles.
Yeah.
And no white flour.
That's great. We'll
Sea bread, but, and I also lost 40 pounds.
Wow.
It was 270 in February. And I hadn't been my exercise routine, I'm one-handed during that time, but yeah. So now I'm back on the bicycle and on the trail, and yeah, it's that food, the plant-based, and I do it 80-20. So if I do it 100%, yeah, but it's not easy. It is not easy.
Well, it's definitely a change from what you're used to, right? That makes it hard.
Huge.
We're going to talk a lot about that next week, about the inflammation in the foods that we eat and why it does this. So you understand next week what's making me hurt and what's limiting, keeping my cholesterol high and my blood pressure up. And then after next week, we'll talk about how to use foods to help you heal and reverse that. So that's a really good lead in. Okay, so the assignment this week was to not eat 3 hours before bed. If you go to bed just a little bit hungry, that's really kind of what we're looking for. Just like I really would like a snack right now, but I'm going to pass on it. That's kind of the place you want to get. And then we want you to start, as Marilyn said, start eating more fruits and vegetables. And the goal this week isn't like a salad and then a bunch of broccoli and then, a bunch of cauliflower. It's 4 different vegetables, 4 different colors. I don't care if it's 1 cherry tomato, a red cherry tomato, 1 little piece of cauliflower, which is white, a green Brussels sprout, and then, 1 other color. I don't care how much, just 4 different vegetables, bites every day. Okay. And if you can eat it raw, it's the best. But if you can't handle that, then don't do that. But vegetables are the primary source of your healing. You got to get to the point where you can tolerate vegetables. And then fruits are also really good, especially the berry family. Okay, so hopefully you'll continue to, work on the assignments in the workbook, in the journal. And then next week, we're going to go over your blood work. And we're going to talk about chronic diseases that have been caused by the wrong foods. And I'm going to show you how our diet has changed in the last 100 years to lead us to where we are right now with the foods that are available, and why it's so easy to gain weight, to have heart disease and high blood pressure, and to be at risk for cancer and have acid reflux and arthritis pain. It's mostly the wrong foods. So we want to identify those foods so we can be careful to avoid them. Okay, so anybody have any questions? No? Yes.
So I've been drinking my water, which is a big huge compliment, but are we have to count, should we count coffee in that or no? Like I drink black coffee, should that be a part of it or
Part of what?
the ounces of water?
I mean, it's not really ideal, but I know what you're saying. It's hard for some people, especially, to get a lot of water. But it's a way to hydrate. So I'm not being critical of caffeine now. That'll come later.
I want you to be honest with me. I mean, I drank my water like I was supposed to.
Yeah.
but I won't.
Yeah, well, the thing is I don't want people to get overwhelmed with too many changes. Caffeine is not the best substance to have, but I don't want you to worry about caffeine now. And if you're drinking 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day or 4 Diet Cokes, I don't really want you to worry about that. I don't want you to stop it because that's just too much. It's too overwhelming to try to change too much. Eventually, we'll have you try to cut back on the caffeine intake because to me, caffeine is a sign that you are fatigued and you're using that as a stimulant to get you going. And if we change our foods, we have more energy because we're eating the right foods. If we improve our sleep quality because we're exercising a little bit more and we're not going to bed with a lot of food in our stomach, our sleep quality improves. So the need for the caffeine will be diminished as we make these small changes. So that's my honest answer. So I don't want you to worry about caffeine right now. Does that help? Okay. Yes.
When we were supposed to fast this week, we started to study fasting and what it does for the body.
Yeah.
And we actually found it's really positive to fast. And a lot of people recommend doing regular fasting.
Yes.
Do you regularly fast?
I fast once a month and I try to intermittent fast every day with about 18 hours. Yeah, I need to be a little bit better at it because some people can go 2 or 3 days without food. And some even think there's no way. But these people, they're not hungry. They don't feel deprived. And it's one of the best things you can do to prevent cancer, or even if you have cancer, to treat it, because cancer feeds especially on sugar. Heart disease progresses with sugar and those carbs. The people that live the oldest eat the least amount of food and they walk a lot. Their exercise is walking. So yeah, there's a ton that could be said about that. And I was at a conference over the weekend. I have a lot of good stuff to share with you about intermittent fasting and its role in preventing cancer and heart disease. So that's the ultimate. Yeah. And when you're doing intermittent fasting correctly, it's like anything else. You're mixing it up. One day you go 18 hours, the next time you do, you go 24 and then 36 and then 18 and then 36. Your body never knows when you're going to eat again. And you will have more energy. You'll think more clearly, and your blood pressure will come down. Your cholesterol will come down. You'll feel a lot better.
Yeah, because we decided we're gonna try to eat just 2 meals a day.
Yeah.
And, just, have a little bit larger span of time when you're not eating. And
So you'll have to let us know in a couple of weeks after you guys have done that how you're feeling, because that's one of the best dietary habits you can develop. It's hard though because we're social beings and we like to eat out with friends and do things, and sometimes that gets in the way of it. But it'll save you a lot of money and save you a lot of time if you're not eating that often.
Yeah, we've chosen lunch as our meal that we don't. But,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
On the other day.
Yes, Debbie.
Yeah, there was a question, you probably didn't see it. Was the data you put on, it's not an alarm clock, it's an opportunity clock? Which I really like, by the way, but I did get some twice, sorry. Lori Knapp had put a question on here. I don't use my Fitness Pal, I use Lose It, so I'm not familiar with how that one's set up. But her question was, in my Fitness Pal app, it has you plug in the percentage of macronutrients. If I'm trying to stay around 50 grams of carbs, then it seems like a lot of protein and or fat is needed. So I don't know, do you use that one or use the
I use the Lose It app, but they're the same, pretty much the same.
Okay.
It's not wrong to have fat in your diet. So when you keep your carbs really low, you're either going to eat more protein or more fat. I'll tell you, I think you have to be really careful with a lot of animal protein. If you look at bodybuilders and powerlifters who eat a lot of animal protein, they age quickly and they have a lot of heart disease. We're not designed to be carnivorous animals.
Right.
So what we should think about every time we eat is vegetables. I got to find a way to get vegetables, but 2 cups of broccoli is not going to fill you up very well. So you got to have fat with it. So you put butter on it, or sour cream, or olive oil or something. You need some other form of fat. And nuts are a great way to get those fats too. So yeah, that's a good point, because you're gonna be like, what do I do here? It's either fat or protein, and it should be more of an emphasis on fat. Fat will not make you gain weight. It'll not make you fat. Carbs will make you gain weight.
Thanks.
Yes.
Speaking of that, the broccoli, Maryland again, when I asked, okay, what's popcorn? Okay, I can ditch the chips and all that, I can, don't like it that much anyway, but I gotta have popcorn when watching a movie. Can I eat popcorn? 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, no. What? No popcorn? I can't watch a movie, I gotta be eating popcorn. So I have put Mrs. Dash on my popcorn, because no salt, she said, okay, that's pretty good, Mrs. Dash on popcorn is pretty good. But she says, absolutely, she says, try to shed the popcorn. Well, what can I eat then? Have a bowl of broccoli. What? Raw broccoli? Yeah.
That's called thinking outside the box, right?
She does it real well. I haven't done that yet because I got my teeth pulled in March. So to reduce the inflammation, because my bridge fell apart, so my lower teeth are missing. And so yes, I get them back on the 20th of October. So I will watch a movie with a bowl of broccoli.
How about chickpeas? Could she roast chickpeas?
What's that?
How about chickpeas? Could she roast chickpeas?
Yes, you could do chickpeas. Yeah, that's good. You could munch on carrots or celery too, if you want to chew on something.
When you have teeth.
Yeah, true.
Steamed carrots.
Steamed carrots. There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you next week. Okay. Yeah.
Good customer.